Hello there everyone and welcome back. So following on from last night's Rock Your Journal Live, I'm continuing on with my cover and doing a little bit more. There's a couple of things that I want to explain. I get asked a lot about this, about my board. So basically what I did was I went up to my local hobbycraft store. I purchased a wooden art board. It's got a handle at the top up here and it's just plain board. Then what I did was I went onto Amazon and I ordered some sticky back plastic, which is what this blue wood effect is. I was asked the question on the comments on last night's video whether it's heat resistant and washable. I can wipe it down because it's plastic, but I will not heat on it because it's plastic. So when it comes to any heating or anything, I will add my silicone mat or something like that down on top of the surface. I sometimes have a glass mat on it, sometimes I have a clear plastic mat on it, but I find that when I'm videoing, the reflection from the light shines up off the glass mat, so I tend not to use that too much when it's in the videos. Okay, now then, the cover. So last night I showed you that I was going to make a ring bound type of journal. I haven't decided yet how many rings I'm going to add, because that will depend partly on the pages that I'm going to be adding to it. If I'm going to be adding smaller pieces of paper, stroke card, some tags to it, then I might need 4 or 5 rings on it. If all the pages were going to be the same size, then I might only need 3 rings on it. I'll make that decision as I go on. I don't need to make that decision right now, this very minute. But what I do want to do is I want to cover the back of this board. And I'll show you the next part of it as well. So I have chosen these papers from my paper stack to go on the back. So I'm going to cut those out and add those on top. Yeah, let's do that first. So let's measure what size I'm going to need. Obviously, dependent on what your journal is, how you're making it, you'll need to work out your own measurements. I want to leave the tiniest borders around the outer edge. So the actual width of this is 6 7/8. So I'm going to cut my paper down to 6 3/4 inches wide. Let me get a pencil and write that down because I always forget. So 6 3/4 inches wide by, and the height of it is 9, 4, 5, 6. So 9 3/4 inches. So I'm going to cut it down to 9 5/8. 9 5/8. Okay, 6 3/4 by 9 5/8. 9 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 eighths. Is that one? 9 5/8. So that's the height. And then the width, I want it to 6 3/4. 6 3/4. Just double check that that fits on there nicely with the tiniest of borders going around it. Yes, it does. That's perfect. So I'm going to cut the other piece to the same size for the back cover. So that's both my pieces now cut out, and I'm going to adhere them to the back of the board. Now obviously you'll need to be aware of any directional pattern that's on your paper when it comes to cutting these down to size. Fortunately this paper doesn't have one, so don't need to contemplate it. Now whilst I'm using the Liquitex matte gel glue, you don't have to use that if you don't want. I would probably use my collal glue, would be my other choice, or even my Tombow glue, but use what you've got. You know, don't feel that you've got to use the same glues as I'm using. because obviously I do a lot more creating and stuff, so there are certain glues that I do like to have for certain jobs, and I'm quite happy to spend the money on buying those glues. And whilst they're handy to always have in, it doesn't automatically follow that you're going to use them all the time, whereas I will. So only purchase the specialist stuff if you really feel that you're going to use it, and use it regularly, because otherwise, you know, you might as well just get the cheaper stuff. It still works, and or utilise what you've got. You know, don't feel that you've got to go out and go and purchase specialist products, especially for this project. So make sure I've got it nicely on the edges. I want to make sure that I'm going to get a good contact. Let's put that to one side for a moment. And then this can be stuck on the back side of this. Make sure that it's all nice and square. And then I'm just going to use my bone folder to just squidge it down somewhat and make sure that I've got that really good contact. Now, the other reason why I like using this glue is as I'm pushing down on this, I haven't got glue oozing out the edge. Whereas if I'd use one of my other glues, you know, that sometimes happens. And sometimes the glue can end up leaving a little bit of a mark on your paper. So at least I know that that's not going to happen with this one. So that's my front cover now, with paper on the front and on the back. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of these metal book corners onto the corner of the cover, just to help to give it a little bit of extra protection. And the way in which I like to do that is I like to use my glossy accents, and I like to put some of the glossy accents inside of the metal book corner. All right, so it's just sitting inside of there. I don't want too much because I don't want it oozing out everywhere. Then I'm just going to sit it to one side for a moment and do the other four. So just a little bit of glue on the inside. Now I'm going to do 4 corners, because obviously these corners are going to be in play when it comes to adding the ring binders and the opening and closing and stuff. Normally on a journal you only do these 2 corners and the back 2 corners, but in this instance I'm going to put 4 on, 1 on each corner. Now the other thing about putting the glossy accents in is that if you just leave it for a little while, like I'm doing with these here, the glue just starts to go off a little bit, and it just helps to make it that little bit more sticky. Otherwise you have to wait for the glue to take. So it has quite a long drying time when you're dealing with metal. So I'm just going to put that first one on there and then push them together. One of the things that you might find that you need is some form of pliers to just push it in, and maybe even just flatten it a little to squidge it between the 2 layers. Now it doesn't take a lot of pressure because you don't want to totally distort it. So that's one corner done, and that glue just helps to hold it in place. You don't have to put the glue on, but I just find it helps with trying to hold it in place. And then just flatten it a little bit. with the pliers. Okay, so I've now got those two corners done and the other two. So I'm going to go off and carry on working on these, and then I'll be back in a moment to show you the next step of what I'm going to do to my journal. So I'll see you back here in a minute. Okay, so that's my corners now all on and in place. The next thing I want to do is I want to create a space where I can write all the prompts down, so I've always got them to hand, and those I'm going to stick on the inside cover. So I've decided that I'm going to use this Tim Holtz Sizzix Thinlit die of the number is 662697. Now, I will say that in the description box beneath the video, I've got an Amazon affiliate link in there. And it's almost like me having a little mini shop, and it's of the products that I like to use. So you can have a look in the description box, click on the link, and it will take you to the likes of these types of products and the glues and the papers that I use. So you'll be able to find these in there. So I've already punched out or die cut the pieces that I'm going to be using, and I've got this lovely blue paper here. Now, bearing in mind, let me clear a space. Bearing in mind that this edge is going to have holes punched in it, so when I flip it over, the holes are going to be on this side here. And I've die cut these out of this blue paper, and there's 5 slots, okay, for me to use. So I'm going to sit them on this way, and I'm going to use tags to write my prompts on. So and I'll sit 2 in each of these slots, so that's 10 tags per thing. All right, and we got 30 days, so I've done 3. So they are going to sit on there like that, and then there's this extra little piece that you cut out with the dies as well, and that sits on the top there as a little decorative piece. So that's what I'm going to use on there, and then I'll be able to write on my tags and put those in place in there. So let's stick those in place. I'm going to ink up this little tab piece just to make it stand out a little bit more. So I'm just using my Vintage Photo Distress ink by the lovely Mr. Tim. And then that will glue on there. And that will sit just about there. Right, and then flip it over, and I'm going to place glue around the 3 sides, making sure that I don't put too much on, because I don't want it squidging into the area where the tags are going to go, and therefore reducing the amount of space. And then that will sit there. So as I say, I'm far enough now from where those rings are going to sit. And then I'll glue the other 2 on in a moment. And then the next thing that I've done is I've cut out these rectangles, and I've done them to 3.5 inches long to 2 inches wide. And all I've done is I've used up some scraps of some file folders that I've got. This is a Stampin' Up punch. I don't know whether it's still available, but you slot your 2-inch wide piece of card in there, push it in as far as it'll go. Have to manoeuvre it just a little. There we go, and punch. And it gives me this really pretty little tag top. And then I would ink the edges up. Front and back. And again, just doing it with my vintage photo. And then at a later date, if I find that I want to add some seam binding or something, then I can do. And then that just slots inside of there. So I'll have 2 of those per slot. And then I'll write my prompts on here. So I'm going to go off and finish doing these, and I'll be back in a minute. That's my first one. Now all ready to use, and there's just 5 in there for now. I might even add these on the back cover. I might just keep it to 5 in each one instead of 10. So that will be 5, 10, 15, and then the other 15 on the back cover, and that balances it out a little bit. So we're down to the first 2 prompts for April. So I'm just going to pull my little tag out and write my prompt on here. Now then, do I want to do it that way or do I want to do it that way? I'm going to do it that way, I think. The other thing that I've got, which is what I used in my previous Rock Your Journal, is I've got this little stamp, date stamp. And let me just get a little bit of scrap paper. And so I dated each of the pages because we did the pages at random. So I want to use the date stamp again because I really like the look of it, because it looks sort of old and vintagey. So I am going to add, now then, do I want the date stamp there? Ooh, eeny, meeny, miny, moe. I'm going to put them all there, because that bit is the bit that I'll see first. Here we go with the first one. So I'm going to put it at the top up here. So there we go, 1st of April 2021. And I'm also using my Frixion pen to write this down, just in case I mucks it up. At least I can rub it out. For any of you who haven't seen these before, this bit is like a little rubber, and the friction, the heat from it erases the pen. So the first prompt is make bunting add your name. Okay, so make bunting and add your name is the first prompt. So it's now up to you to have a look at that prompt and just think to yourself, okay, what can I do? It's about using your imagination. It's about looking at the stash that you've got, what you could utilise, and then you creating your page. So I will cut out my page that I'm going to utilise. Think about this, make some bunting, do the page, okay? The second prompt, which means changing the date on this, so don't forget to do that, Carol. That one, isn't it? To number 2, so that's the 2nd of April. Stamp it off. 2nd of April 2021. And the second prompt is a basic timeline of your life. Okay, so a basic timeline of your life. And again, it's up to you how you interpret these 2 prompts. So it's about you now going away, having a little think about, as I say, what you've got in your stash that you could use to interpret these 2 prompts. Everyone will come up with completely different ideas. And then I'll come back, not tomorrow, but the day after, to give you the next 2 prompts and also to show you how I interpreted these myself. All right. So have fun. Don't stress about it. It's only paper. And we're here to enjoy our little selves. So have fun creating, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for joining me again today, and I'll see you again really soon. Bye.